Excellencies, dignitaries, experts, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to everyone joining from different time zones. I welcome you all to this high-level multi-stakeholder policy dialogue to end plastic pollution and deliver actions for harmony with nature. Organized by India Water Foundation and supported by National Water Mission of the Ministry of Jal Shakti, Government of India. This event is organized to commemorate the World Environment Day 2025 with the theme to end plastic pollution and the International Day of Biodiversity with the theme of living in harmony with nature. The planet and humanity is being plagued by a triple planetary crisis: climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss. Out of these, only pollution threatens our land, food, water, and air, and plastic is invariably present in each one of them. In the past 6 decades, we have produced more than 8.4 billion tons of plastic. If we don't do anything about the plastic soup, oceans will carry more plastic than fish by 2050. It's a tragedy for life and planet. Plastics don't degrade but turn into microplastics. These potent environmental contaminants are distributed pervasively in foods, drinking water, and salts. They are a menace for humans and animals equally. The biodiversity, whether on land, freshwater, or in marine ecosystems, is bearing the brunt of this extreme enduring product, plastic. In prior research, microplastics have been detected in the bloodstream and subsequently accumulate in various organs, including the placenta, and increasing the risk of fetal exposure and potential health hazards. From endless meetings like UNIA 6, INC 5.1, agreements, frameworks, bans, plastic somehow find its way back into our lives. For instance, in India, even after imposing this ban on single-use plastics, there's still rampant circulation across the country. Awareness of the scale and nature of global plastic pollution has grown rapidly in recent years, but tackling the issue can't be left to random, uncoordinated initiatives. Nor should the responsibility be dumped on the shoulders of consumers. What are the circularity models for plastic that can be adopted? Is living without plastics impossible? What policies and regulations can be implemented to reduce plastic pollution and protect biodiversity? How many more awareness campaigns are needed? Are the policies and laws stringent enough for implementing bans? These are some of the questions we'll try to find out answers for by the end of this dialogue. To initiate this dialogue, I would request Dr. Arvind Kumar, President, India Water Foundation, to present an overview of the things to come in this dialogue. Dr. Kumar is a strategist and key influencer in the development sector with more than 30 years of experience as an author, columnist, water and human rights proactivist, and specializes in concepts like ecosystem-based adaptation, water energy food nexus, with specific emphasis on transversal approach of interlinkages between water, environment, and SDGs. He has published over 500 plus research articles and several books. He is a proud recipient of Achievers Award for his contribution to the environment from International Human Rights Organization in collaboration with United Nations Information Center, India. Dr. Kumar, please.
Thank you, Sweta. Good afternoon, everyone. Sri Raj Bhushan Chaudhary ji, Minister of State for Jal Shakti, Government of India. Ms. Showmaker, Executive Secretary, Convention of Biological Diversity. Dr. Satya Tripathi, Secretary General, Global Alliance for a Sustainable Planet. Dr. Ritesh Kumar, Director, South Asia Wetlands International. Dr. Carrie Albury, Senior Policy Advisor, INC Secretariat. UNEP, Dr. Ashok Sikka, Country Representative, India and Bangladesh, IMI. Dr. Sara Manueli, Communications and Advocacy Office, Mountain Partnership, FAO. Dr. Karen, Senior Policy Advisors, Center for Policy Law, IUCN. Dr. Ms. Malti Goyal, Chief Executive and President, Climate Change Research Institute. Dr. Bholu Ram Yadav, Senior Scientist, Solid and Hazardous Waste Management, CSR NERI. Distinguished guests and delegates and colleagues. It is my honor to welcome you all to this vital policy dialogue where we confront one of the most urgent environmental crises of our time, plastic pollution, and its far-reaching implications on biodiversity, the interconnected web of societal development, infrastructural expansion, and biodiversity decline has woven a complex tapestry of challenges that demand urgent attention and concerted action, from the sprawling fields of the modern agriculture to the bustling corridors of the urbanization, from the depths of the oceans to the heights of the forest. No corner of the earth remain untouched by the forces driving diversity loss and the ever-present pollutant in all these ecosystems in plastic. Plastic is now everywhere, embedded in the food we eat, the water we drink, and alarmingly, the most remote corners of the planet, from deep ocean trenches to high mountain peaks, no ecosystem has left untouched. Every year, over 14 million tons of the plastics enter our oceans, causing a estimate $13 billion in damage to marine ecosystems. The ripple efforts don't stop there. Entire ecosystems falter under the accumulation of plastic waste, losing their resilience to sustain biodiversity or provide critical functions like absorbing carbon and purifying water. From extinction and production to the disposal and incineration, plastics leak hazardous chemicals and microplastics at every stage of their lifestyle cycle, severely disrupting ecological balance, but the impact do not stop at our shorelines. Freshwater ecosystems, terrestrial habitats, and even the air we breathe are now carrying the burden of our plastic addiction. Plastic pollution is not just littering the planet, it's unraveling its life support systems. The policy dialogue is designed to act as a collaborative platform where knowledge translates into policy and policy into action. Through today's discussions, we seek to better understand the systematic linkages between plastic pollution and biodiversity loss. We will examine how international frameworks such as the Convention on the Biological Diversity, the forthcoming Plastic Treaty INC 5.2 meeting, and the Sustainable Development Goals can guide our collaborative response. The world deserves a robust and ambitious and equitable agreement, one that goes beyond consensus and delivers real solutions to one of the most pressing environmental challenges of our time. Securing a deal is undoubtedly important, but it must not come at the expense of meaningful action. A treaty that fails to address the root causes of plastic pollution will only serve as a hollow victory. The Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework represents an enormous and long-awaited step towards halting extinction rate that some scientists are calling an existential crisis akin the climate change. But its very nature, biodiversity is cross-cutting. No single body alone can address the challenges that lie ahead to achieve the conservation and the sustainable use of biodiversity. The time is compelling us to be bold and constructive. Developing countries, in particular, need targeted support to build institutional capacities, empower communities to tackle this challenge on the ground. This is a shared responsibility. Governments, industries, multilateral agencies, research institutions, and civil society must work together to craft integrated, inclusive, and forward-looking solutions. We have to improve waste management systems so that the right infrastructure is available to receive plastic waste and ensure its reuse, especially in India, where it's the most mismanaged in the world. Enhance circularity by promoting more sustainable consumption and production practices across the entire plastic value chain, and find economic and sustainable alternatives. I'm sure The eminent speakers will throw light on some new approaches and ways to beat plastic pollution. As the organizer, we hope the dialogues it makes the uh, uh, concrete pathways for the action. Let us move beyond instrumental challenges. Let us be the generation that broke free from the illusion of convenience and choose resilience, uh, generation, and responsibility. Thank you and wish you all a meaningful and impactful exchange ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar, for your address and putting light on what is about to come for the next 1.5 hours. I now request Sri Raj Bhushan Chaudhary, Minister of State, Ministry of Jal Shakti, Government of India, for his chair address.
Namaskar. I am honored to address this esteemed gathering as we come together to commemorate both World Environment Day and the International Day of Biodiversity. This year's theme, Plastic, Pollution and Harmony with Nature and Sustainable Development, present us with an urgent opportunity to reflect, re-evaluate and reimagine the path we are treading. These themes remind us the deep interconnection between ecosystem, water systems, and the growing threat posed by climate change. India, with its rich civilizational heritage, has long nurtured a deep respect for the environment. Our philosophy of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the world is one family, teaches us to live in harmony with all living beings. Environmental conservation is not a new concept for us. It is embedded in our traditions, visible from the sacred groups of our villages to the rivers revered as deities in our culture. Under the visionary leadership of our Honorable Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi ji, India has launched several ambitious initiatives to restore ecological balance. The Swachh Bharat Abhiyan stands out as a transformational people-led movement that has improved sanitation and laid the groundwork for tackling plastic pollutions. Plastic as a material is not inherently harmful. It has revolutionized sectors such as healthcare, clean energy, and food security. However, the problem lies in its single-use nature and poor waste management. Globally, nearly 50% plastic waste come from packaging. Most of it is used only once before being discarded. In India, it is estimated that we generate over 26,000 tons of plastic waste every day, more than 9.3 million tons annually, with some estimates suggesting the number could be even higher. This waste finds its way into our cities, drain, leading to urban flooding, and into our rural landscape and rivers, where it breaks down into microplastic, harming aquatic life and even entering our food chain. Without urgent and coordinated action, the projected doubling of global plastic production could push us towards the ecological tipping point. Recognizing the scale of this challenge, the Ministry of Jal Shakti has significantly ramped up efforts to eliminate plastic pollution from our rivers, lakes, and water bodies. Our approach is holistic, rural to urban, grassroots to policy, with a focus on infrastructure, behavioral change, and interministerial collaboration. Under Swachh Bharat Mission Gramin, Phase 2, more than 5.64 lakhs villages out of 5.8 lakhs total villages, that is over 96% of all inhabited villages, have declared themselves open defecation free plus as of February 2025. Further, over 5.01 lakh villages have set up solid waste management system, and 5.21 lakhs villages have implemented liquid waste management. A key part of this rural transformation has been the establishment of 1,790 rural plastic waste management units across 4,600 blocks. These units collect, segregate, and process plastic waste at the village level. Non-recyclable waste is safely transported to higher tier facilities, minimizing environmental leakage. Innovative models are making a real impact. For instance, in Bihar, the Kabar Mandi mobile app enables households to sell plastic and non-biodegradable waste from their homes, promoting recycling while also creating a livelihood opportunity. This fusion of sustainability and entrepreneurship is a model we aim to replicate across the country. In urban India, the Swachh Bharat Mission Urban promotes source segregation, recycling, and creation of material recovery facility. Local urban bodies are receiving technical and financial support to scale up plastic waste management. The rural and urban landscape free of dry and plastic waste projects active since October 2021 is a shining example of cross-sector collaboration. It showcases our problematic plastic can be upcycled into useful products, turning waste into value. Community participation is central to our mission. Cleanup drives, awareness campaigns, school competitions, and public outreach initiatives have fostered a growing culture of responsibility around the plastic use and disposal. Success stories like Rudka Kalan in Punjab shows how structured plastic waste management unit can reduce open dumping, create jobs, and ensure environmental compliance. Through partnership with private sector and civil society, we have also taken on the challenge of recycling complex material like thermocol. Recycling just 1 ton of EPS can prevent 2 to 3 tons of CO2 emission, aligning with our broader circular economy goals and India's commitment to green growth and carbon neutrality. To further strengthen our environmental action, the Ministry of Jal Shakti has also launched the nationwide Catch the Rain 2025 campaign in collaboration with the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. This initiative emphasizes rainwater harvesting, groundwater recharge, and ecosystem restoration, linking plastic reduction and climate resilience and biodiversity conservation. With sustainable budgetary allocation of 950.3 million for 2025 to 26, we are investing in long-term scalable solution. Our vision is clear: to transform waste into resources, restore ecosystem, and achieve development that is truly in harmony with nature. Our national strategy is backed by strong regulation. India has implemented comprehensive plastic and solid waste management rules, and steps are underway to make all public buildings and university free of single-use plastics. We firmly believe that defeating plastic pollution requires out-of-the-box thinking across the entire life cycle of plastic, from design and production to usage and disposal. This call for the shift towards a green good behavior, sustainable alternatives, and a responsible consumption pattern. As part of the One Nation, One Mission in plastic pollution campaign, aligned with Mission Life, we are mobilizing citizens across India through cleanup drives, workshops, innovations, and educational outreach to be active partner in this mission. Our achievement in sewage infrastructure further support our goals. As of January 2025, over 300 projects have been completed with an investment of 4 lakh millions, including 127 sewage treatment projects that have increased capacity to 3,446 MLD. Cities like Prayagraj and Varanasi have shown remarkable improvement. For example, Prayagraj's capacity rose from 268 MLD in 2017 to 348 MLD in 2024, and Varanasi from 100 MLD to 420 MLD. The number of untapped drainage has significantly decreased. Through the National Mission of Clean Ganga, we have also built a strong international collaboration, partnership with organizations like the Ocean Cleanup and Netherlands Embassy are helping us deploy innovative technology for river cleaning and pollution monitoring under the initiatives such as Prayag. It stands for Platform for Real-Time Analysis of Yamuna, Ganga, and their tributaries through various online dashboards such as Ganga Tarang portal, Jasmo plant through online drone data, PMT tool dashboard, Ganga district performance monitoring system, etc. India reaffirms its commitment to defeat plastic pollution. Governments, industries, and individuals will all have to play a major role in weaning society from its dependence on single-use plastic that continue to be an adversary to our natural environment. There is a need to raise consciousness about the impact plastics have on society and environment, and to inform and educate people about alternate materials. I call upon all citizens, and in particular the civil society groups, to be crusaders for the realizing this goal. There is also an onus on the industry as part of their green corporate responsibility to ensure that plastic they make are degradable, recyclable, and reusable. As we commemorate World Environment Day and the International Day of Biodiversity, let us renew our collective commitment not just to end plastic pollution, but to secure cleaner, greener, and more resilient planet. This is not just a policy goal, rather it is a moral imperative. It is about safeguarding our natural heritage, our water systems, and the future of the generation to come. Let this be our shared legacy, a nation and a planet in harmony with nature, driven by action and united in purpose. I congratulate Dr. Arvind Kumar, President, India Water Foundation, for convening this important dialogue, and hope we shall be as proactive in future as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Now I invite Ms. Astrid Shoemaker, Executive Secretary of the Convention on Biological Diversity. Prior to this role, she served as Director for Green Diplomacy and Multilateralism at the European Commission, where she advanced global efforts towards circular low-emission, nature-positive economies and strengthened international environmental governance. Dr. Shoemaker, please.
May 22nd is the International Day for Biological Diversity, or Biodiversity Day. Proclaimed by the United Nations General Assembly, it commemorates the adoption of the text of the Convention on Biological Diversity on 22nd May 1992. We at the Secretariat of the Convention want Biodiversity Day to be your day and everyone's day. Why? Because biodiversity is the foundation of all life on Earth, so it matters to everyone. This year, the theme of Biodiversity Day is harmony with nature and sustainable development. This theme highlights the linkages between the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs, and the targets of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, the KMGBF. The universally agreed deadline for the implementation of both the SDGs and the KMGBF is 2030. That is just 5 years from now. So we need a whole of government and whole of society push for the accelerated and synergistic implementation. Everyone can act in diverse ways, and every action matters. For governments, this means implementing their national biodiversity strategies and action plans in alignment with the KMGBF. For businesses, this means assessing and disclosing dependencies and impacts on nature. Those that make commercial use of digital sequence information on genetic resources should now pledge contributions to the Kali Fund. Biodiversity Day is also an opportunity to show appreciation to environmental defenders and all those who protect biodiversity, including indigenous peoples and local communities, women and youth, as well as journalists and members of civil society. Everyone, everywhere, can join the global digital campaign with the hashtag Biodiversity Day. I invite you to visit the webpage at cbd.int. There you will find elements you can use to craft and tell your own story. We want to hear it. And we look forward to seeing your videos and events make a buzz online and in communities around the world for a better world for all and for harmony with nature.
Thank you so much, Dr. Shoemaker. We appreciate that the International Day of Biodiversity is being celebrated throughout the world, globally, in big numbers by people. Thank you so much. Our next speaker today is Ms. Sara Manueli, Communications and Advocacy Officer with a background in social anthropology and journalism. She is the author of several books and articles published in technical journals and the media, focusing on sustainable mountain development. Since 2008, she has worked at the Mountain Partnership Secretariat at the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations in Rome, Italy, where she develops and implements strategies to raise awareness about mountain regions and their communities. Ms. Sara Manueli, please.
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me. It's an honor to join you today in this high-level event dialogue. I think we will come together with a purpose to end plastic pollution and champion harmony with nature. And I thank the India Water Foundation for inviting me to speak at this important event. Just a few words of where I work. I'm an advocacy officer at the Mountain Partnership Secretariat. And for those who don't know us, the Secretariat is hosted at FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, which is also the UN lead agency for mountains. We were founded in 2002, which makes us 22-year-old, almost 23-year-old. And we're really the only global multi-stakeholder dedicated to mountains, to improving the well-being of mountain communities and advocating for the protection of mountain environments. We have 600 members, including 68 governments. So again, it's a real, what we call a multi-stakeholder platform where different members from the global network come together to address the pressing challenges that face mountain regions. And we know that mountains are particularly vulnerable to climate change, to unsustainable land management, to avalanches and droughts, and also all the escalating risks of glacier melt. And of course, they face this very important additional significant, but often it's overlooked threat, which is plastic pollution. Plastic pollution, plastic waste is infiltrating mountain areas at alarming rates. contaminating those that were once more remote and seemingly untouched environments. We know that microplastics have been found on the Mount Everest summit, also in soils, snow, and lake across regions like the Alps, the Pyrenees, and the Rockies. And this shows that really plastic pollution knows no boundaries. And of course, the most terrible consequence of this is that pollution directly affects the vital freshwater resources and therefore the biodiversity, impacting both mountain and downstream regions. We know that plastic waste often contains hazardous chemicals which contaminate snow, soil, and groundwater. And I think addressing it in mountain areas, especially remote mountain areas, is particularly challenging because we know that mountain communities face harsh conditions. No, they often have limited infrastructure, and they often carry out unsustainable practices like open dumping and burning. And these practices endanger human health, degrade the vital habitats, and harm the local economies. And specifically local economies, we must remember tourism, which is obviously vital when sustainable managed by the mountain communities, but also is a large contributor to growing plastic footprint. So it's important that we try and shift towards a more sustainable approach in mountain tourism, which can be grounded in economy principles and zero waste initiatives. We know that some important steps have been taken. For example, we know that on Mount Kilimanjaro, there have been steps to curb plastic pollution, including a ban on soft plastic water bottles and bags since 2013. And there's a nationwide prohibition of the use of plastic bags in Tanzania since 2011. Similarly, in Nepal, the Everest Base Camp, which is, if you see the images, still impressively polluted, but has been declared a plastic-free zone, and movements are towards changing this. And that there has been a reduction of waste in the region, especially in the busy climbing season. So it's important that we take these as good examples, that we improve innovation, for example, sustainable packaging, reuse systems, and for all those communities that are actually working in green businesses for recycling plastics. For the Mountain Partnership, pollution, waste management has been a priority. For example, our Aspen Declaration 2022 mentions it. And so we obviously collectively work with some key members, and I would like to also mention UNEP, that does a lot of work on that, on greater research and monitoring plastic pollution changes in mountain regions. We also prioritize that this pollution and waste management is integrated into mountain policies, because that will lead to real change. And as I said before, we obviously advocate for financial investments in plastic waste management solutions, which can allow mountain communities to take part in these changes. So that means also Indigenous people, women and youth to lead some solutions, innovations, and ideas on how to combat plastic pollution. I think it's also very important to focus on education and awareness campaign, headed to mountain schools and tourist sectors. I was in Nepal recently it wasn't a trek, it was just a walk towards a monastery. And there were some areas which are used as picnic areas, and they were absolutely full of plastic cups, plates, bags. And these are recreational areas for many families who like to take a picnic next to the monastery in the mountains. These are behaviors that need kind of somehow adapting to, and through education, especially through the youth, to shift these behaviors and keep mountains free, and maybe with plastic cleanup days, etc. So I think it's obviously a complex challenge, and it requires a wide range of collaborations at the policy and at the grassroots level, passing through education and through youth and children. And the Mountain Partnership, as always, stands ready to support governments, intergovernmental organizations, but also civil society and private sector, and local communities in this critical mission. So thank you very much for today's opportunity.
Thank you, Sarah. And this is what all of us are worried about, that even mountains, oceans, nothing is, without plastic. You can find it everywhere. Our next speaker for today is Ms. Carrie Albury. She's a senior policy advisor at the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee Secretariat within the United Nations Environment Programme. She brings extensive experience in international policy and law, having worked in senior advisory roles in multilateral organizations. Ms. Albury holds an advanced degree from the Institut des Hautes Études Internationales at their development, reflecting a strong academic background in international affairs. As part of the UNEP INC Secretariat, she plays a key role in supporting policy formulation and negotiation processes aimed at addressing critical environmental challenges on the international stage. Ms. Carrie Albury, please.
Thank you very much. I hope you can hear me and see me. So my name is Carrie Albury indeed, and I'm working with the Secretariat of the Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee to develop an international legally binding instrument on plastic pollution, including in the marine environment, or INC, as you and I would like to first thank the India Water Foundation for the kind invitation for us to join this dialogue. I'm very grateful to have the opportunity to provide an overview and update on the work of the INC on behalf of our Executive Secretary, Jyoti Mathur-Philippe. So as you know, indeed, in 2022, UN member states adopted Resolution 514 at the United Assembly, Environment Assembly, UNEA, and they agreed to launch negotiations towards an international legally binding instrument on plastic pollution and, importantly, including the marine environment. So the adoption of this resolution and the mandate arising from it reflected the shared recognition of members that the high and increasing levels of plastic pollution that you have just mentioned represent a serious environmental problem at a global scale, to address it through negotiations. The resolution also affirms the urgent need to strengthen global coordination, cooperation, and governance to take action towards the long-term elimination of plastic pollution. So pursuant to this resolution, it's been a very busy time for negotiators. The INC began its work in 2022, and we have already had 5 negotiations. First, INC1 in Uruguay was followed then by 2 sessions in France and in Kenya, respectively, in 2003. The INC then met again in Ottawa in Canada in April 2024. And most recently, the first part of the 5th session, which has now become known as INC 5.1, was held in Busan in the Republic of Korea at the end of last year. And at the end of that meeting, adjourned the session and agreed to resume it for a second part, now referred to as INC 5.2. And this will take place from 5th to 14th of August in Geneva, Switzerland, so in just a couple of months now. And before adjourning, the committee also agreed that it was used as starting point for the continuation of the negotiations, a chair's text, which was the day of INC 5.1 by the chair of the INC, Ambassador Luis Valles Valdivieso of Ecuador. And so this will serve as starting point for the resumed negotiations. So this document is 22 pages and it has 32 draft articles, and it provides a structure for shaping the future treaty, building on all the work that has taken place over the previous sessions, the understanding as the negotiation is still continuing that nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. So when negotiators meet again in Geneva in a couple of months, their focus will be on bridging the remaining differences and finalize the text of the instrument. And I would note that until then, members of the committee also have the opportunity to engage with each other ahead of the session to work on seeking funding differences. And the RNC Secretariat is supporting the work of the committee, including in this intercession period through supporting informal conversations. This includes a series of regional consultations among members across all UN regions, including next week for the Asia Pacific region. And the Secretariat will also be supporting the convening meeting at the heads of delegation level, which is convened by the INC chair at the end of this month in Nairobi. I should mention also that on 10th of June, the executive director of UNEP will also be hosting a ministerial event for members of the committee on the sidelines of the third UNOC conference in Nice. So as you can see, there's a lot of informal intersessional activity, and this is important to support countries in their preparations and also for them to have an opportunity to advance their discussions informally. So of course, multilateral negotiations are always complex, and there's significant common ground on many issues, but it's also recognized that some areas will still require substantive work. So now it's in the hands of members of the committee to build further the solutions necessary to conclude the negotiations at INC 5.2. And this is, of course, a member-driven process, but observer organizations play a very important role through knowledge sharing, insights, and advocacy, as no single government or organization will be able to end plastic pollution alone. This will require an inclusive approach, engaging all stakeholders. So the activities you are having today and others that are ongoing right now are a very important contribution to this process. And thank you very much for the opportunity to update you. I'm available, of course, to answer any questions, and I encourage you to visit the INC website for more information on the process. And that is also where more information will be available closer to the time of the session on the organization of the work. Thank you, or to perhaps seeing some of you in Geneva very soon.
Thank you, Dr. Carrie Albury, for your perspectives on this and also sharing with us what we can hope from INC 5.2 in Geneva in August. Thank you so much for walking us through this. My next speaker is Dr. Ritesh Kumar, Director of Wetlands International South Asia, and a specialist in integrated wetland management with over 25 years of experience. He has led major projects on wetland assessment, ecosystem services, climate adaptation, and water management across South Asia. He works closely with India's Ministry of Environment on wetland policy and planning and serves as a coordinating lead author for UNEP's Global Peatlands Initiative and IPBES assessments. He has published extensively on wetlands conservation and is also on the editorial board of Marine and Freshwater Research, Wetland Ecology and Management, and PLOS Water. Dr. Ritesh, please.
Thank you, Ms. Tyagi, and thank you, Dr. Kumar, for this opportunity to speak on this important topic. I think the global production of plastic since the mid 20th century has seen gargantuan proportions. The annual production, which was around 2 million metric tons in 1950, is hovering to like last 400 million metric tons as of 2017, and more coming. Now, the increase in use has definitely triggered a corresponding increase in plastic pollution, but in the context of wetlands, which are conduits of transport from the catchments to the sea, the role of wetlands and the impact on wetlands has become very critical. In fact, the stocks of plastics accumulating in aquatic environments such as streams, rivers, lakes, and wetlands is projected to triple from 140 million tons in 2019 to nearly 500 million tons in 2060. We should be concerned because many wetlands and species which depend on them are severely affected by plastic pollution. We have seen many images of birds getting trapped, fishes getting trapped, and mammals getting trapped by plastic. Wetlands act not only as conduits for plastic waste, but it also settles in them over long periods, degrading to form harmful microplastics. Plants and animals are affected in vast range of ways. For example, more than 800 marine and coastal species are reportedly identified as affected through ingestion, entanglement, or other dangers. Many migratory species are also threatened by habitat degradation and loss, and some are particularly vulnerable to plastic pollution in rivers and wetlands. Now, what we should remember that wetlands are vital for human survival. The health of wetlands is crucial for maintaining healthy environments. Wetlands are cradles of biological diversity on which countless species of plants and animals depend, and thereby addressing the crisis of plastic pollution is essential and a problem which requires urgent support. But at the same time, it cannot be addressed only by cleanups, but it will need integrated solutions which act right at the source of plastic generation to the way plastics are handled, and solutions which look across the plastic life cycle. Wetlands International South Asia has done some early research on the extent of our knowledge on plastic pollution. And we find this is a subject which has not received the desired level of attention. The quantification of plastics in wetlands is a serious challenge despite the fact that most of the wetlands that we see around cities, the shorelines are choked with plastic in different forms. So we'll have to prioritize the assessment of the extent of plastics in our wetlands, but also see that there are lethal and sublethal impacts of plastic. So even if the impacts on a large scale do not appear now, there is highly likelihood of impacts of plastic smothering or different aspects being evident in times to come, and that may lead us to a point of no return. It is thereby urgent that we take action on this issue, and targeting wetlands will definitely be a crucial element of the overall response strategy, because wetlands, as I said earlier, they represent the catchments, they represent the coastal zone, and they transfer and become material pathways of creating an adverse environment for the oceans. So thank you once again, Dr. Kumar, for this opportunity to convey this message. I have worked with you on the National Policy Forum, and we have made our best effort to alleviate the cause of wetlands conservation, but also be prepared for this emerging risk of plastic pollution in many ways. I congratulate India Water Foundation and assure you of a very collaborative joint effort in addressing this challenging issue. Thank you so much, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ritesh. It's very important for to collaborate if we want to address something which is as important as plastics, because no single body can, take on these challenges alone. My next speaker is Dr. Karen Sejwart. She's a policy advisor at the Center of Policy and Law, IUCN. She's an expert in environmental law and policy with a doctorate in law and extensive experience in international negotiations and biodiversity governance. Dr. Sejwart previously served as Vice Director at the Swiss Federal Office for the Environment and is a lecturer at ETH Zurich. She leads IUCN's policy engagement on global environmental issues, including plastics and biodiversity. Over to you, Ms. Sejwart, please.
Thank you so much. And thank you also for the invitation. Thank you so much, Dr. Kumar, for your introduction in this very important topic. And I want to, on behalf of IUCN, start my presentation or intervention with a quote that our Director General, Dr. Gretel Aguilar, issued just after INC 5.1 closed in December. And I just want to ask if I can share my screen in order that you can see this. Is this possible? Okay, then I will share my screen. Do you see my screen? Okay. So she said plastic pollution has disastrous effects on life in our oceans, rivers, and on land, as well as on human health, and negatively impacts biodiversity. We must be bold in our efforts to make positive change and keep ambition high. IUCN welcomes the progress made at INC 5.1, yet urges UN member states to bridge differences and further collaborate to deliver a strong, science-based, substantive treaty which will benefit nature and people. Our union is committed to this work. And I wanted to quote this because Dr. Kumar mentioned the dialogue today. We want to try to show which are the interlinkages between plastic pollution and biodiversity loss. At the same time, we want also to draw up the synergies between the CBD and the Global Biodiversity Framework and the ongoing negotiations on a plastics treaty. I want also to say and mention that it's not only, we are not only waiting for this treaty. The needs are here on a local, on national, on regional level in order to address the plastic pollution crisis on all these levels all over the world. So the project work, like my previous speakers have already mentioned, Sarah for the mountains regions, and also Dr. Kumar on wetlands. This is so important that we continue to do this, keeping in mind that a global plastic treaty will help to frame a little bit better this work all over the world. IUCN is engaged also in the region of the South Asia Pacific, but also in Africa and in Central America and South America in order to tackle plastic pollution. And this about 15 years ago, we started to do this. Our aim is, and the projects show this, we have also heard that education and awareness raising is one part of it. We have also heard that promoting circular economy means waste, having a look at waste management infrastructure, but also the upstream and midstream measures is so important when we want to support countries that are in need of addressing plastic pollution. So the IUCN engagement throughout this all over projects are really all bits and parts of what is needed, also country specific. And it's important to go up with with this, because it's not only biodiversity loss that we want to address with this work, but also help to get a circular economy approach that attacks the whole life cycle, and also address climate change. Ms. Sveta Tyagi mentioned it at the beginning. We are facing a triple planetary crisis. So this engagement in harmony with nature to address plastic pollution has to be coherent. Bridging to the plastic treaty negotiations, we want to emphasize the following. This future plastic treaty, and we heard it from Dr. Carey, must be science-based and address all phases of the plastic life cycle, because this was in the mandate of the UNIAR resolution, including production. We heard it from the wetland perspective. If we don't tackle the production, then in the wetlands you will have the more and more of especially single-use plastic products that will end up there and also be as microplastic everywhere. So the INC 5.2 will give us another chance to reach an agreement that is not only necessary, but essential if we want to live on a healthy planet. What we as IUCN and also as a voice for nature and people have also seen so far in the treaty draft that biodiversity is still missing as a key element of this text. You see on the right side a Wordle cloud that we have done, looking at all the different text and submissions that has been put on the table so far. So biodiversity is only a small dot in these whole treaty negotiations. This means that champion nations, and I'm so grateful for this dialogue today, have really to address the biodiversity issue within the plastics pollution crisis and also in the measures to address this. And for this, intersessional work has to be done and is still ongoing. We have some objectives for these global plastic treaty negotiations. 2 IUCN resolutions are asking for a strong engagement, but also, and Dr. Kumar mentioned it, the CBD COP16 decisions, the global biodiversity targets, especially its target 7, the Ramsar Convention, the High Seas Treaty on Biodiversity Beyond National Jurisdictions, and the SDG, especially SDG 12. They're really asking for strategically influence these negotiations toward the inclusion of specific language on biodiversity aspects, but also on international cooperation. And we want to make sure that the implementation of the treaty, and I will come to this a little bit later on, is nature positives, means that we put or support countries with methodologies, criteria, but also data to support the national action plans and national legislation once the treaty is adopted. So with regard to the questions you raised at the very beginning, we think that the critical points to be addressed through the future treaty and the treaty implementation in order to be in harmony with nature are, first of all, that the impacts and the effects on biodiversity, but also climate change and people are addressed in the treaty. And this means we need a holistic approach. This could be done in the preambular text or a standalone article on biodiversity or within an article on health and biodiversity following a One Health approach. But importantly also is that we have to be aware that human rights and human health and just transition are very important pillars or guidance for the future treaty, not only to be mentioned in the treaty, but to have a hook also in order that on national and local level, the authorities know how to govern and do their legislation, but also implement it in the future. This means also that indigenous peoples' rights and local communities have to have a place in the future treaty, and not only by mentioning these rights in the preamble text, but be inclusive then in the future implementation. From our side, also circular economy solutions that are nature positive, including for alternatives, that we really find nature-based solutions for these kind of alternatives, that we put as community from science to private sector the criteria and bring forward innovations in order that alternatives and substitutes are nature-based. And this brings me for a very important issue also in the implementation. You are aware that for the Future Plastics Treaty, a national actions plan will be foreseen in order to monitor and report on the progress for the implementation of the treaty. We have been asked by many countries that those should be, or we should show the interlinkages with, for example, national biodiversity strategies and action plans. So in order that countries are not overwhelmed by bureaucracy on the one side, and also not contradictory when it's coming to implement solutions on the ground, and also reporting and improving measurements. This is also valuable for financing, but also for the involvement of the private sector. We have to be aware that we are talking about circular economy, and the future treaty will be unique in this kind as a multilateral environmental agreement, because it addresses not only pieces and parts like Basel waste, Rotterdam Convention and Stockholm Convention, some chemicals, but no, the future treaty will address all parts of a circular economy. So this is important that we have the private sector and small and medium enterprises and the informal sector with us on the ongoing implementation. And finally, this means also that the future treaty has to be coherent and convergent with other multilateral environment agreements, and especially from our perspective with the Global Biodiversity Framework and the CBD. So last but not least, we will continue to work to make the case for biodiversity consideration and coherence with other treaty regimes within the global plastic treaty negotiations, but also with regard to the future implementation, in order that we have something that you have also asked through this panel that is implementable in the future and that helps really to stop plastic pollution on the very ground. And this means also that we have to be present at various other fora. The Global Plastic Treaty negotiations are not in a singular part of multilateralism, but a lot is ongoing, and to be coherent with all of this important work has to be done. I want also to invite you for the Congress, IUCN Congress in October, where I can say plastic pollution is one very strong proposal for a resolution for the engagement, and also to bridge with biodiversity, nature, and people to this endeavor. So thank you so much, and I'm really open and forward looking to questions and discussions.
Thank you so much, Karen. And definitely I'm in alignment with you that without including biodiversity in the agreement and treaty, it won't have the impact that we are seeking this treaty to have. And thank you for inviting us all to the Congress. India Water Foundation, as member of IUCN, would definitely be there. And thank you so much for your intervention and a lovely presentation that you showed. Our next speaker is Dr. Satya Tripathi. He's Secretary General of the Global Alliance for a Sustainable Planet, a development economist, lawyer, and change maker with over 40 years of varied experience. Mr. Tripathi is also the Chancellor of Kalinga Institute of Social Sciences and Senior Distinguished Fellow on Innovation Finance at the World Agroforestry Center. He has served with the UN for more than 2 decades in key positions and was most recently the UN Assistant Secretary General of New York office at UNM. and Secretary of the UN Environment Management Group. Mr. Tripathi, please.
Thank you, and a very warm greetings to all the fellow speakers and the audience from Washington, D.C., where I'm visiting at this time. And apologies for joining a little late because I was at a virtual meeting happening halfway around the world. And of course, it is evening there. And so I had to finish that before I joined. So my sincere apologies for joining late. What we are discussing today is of grave consequence to humanity. There's a lot of discussions happening. There's a lot of conferences and a lot of very wise people expressing concern about various strands of climate action that impacts on biodiversity, and nothing is more dire, or nothing is more pressing in terms of what I would say a present danger, in terms of how it affects humanity, both in terms of how we live our lives, but more importantly, what we consume. Now we know that there are microplastics found in remote areas that have actually, in remote communities that have never had contacts with the broader humanity and live tens of thousands of miles away from humanity. But microplastics have reached there. They have never used plastic in their lives, So all actions have consequences because nature is interconnected. Even if a particular community does not use plastic or has never seen anything remotely close to plastic, whether single use or multi-use, but in their bloodstreams now microplastics are being found. Same with marine species. So, and we have no idea. Well, we have very basic idea of what it might do or what it is already doing in terms of its carcinogenic impact on humanity and the gene pool. But that research is still playing out as to how devastating it could be, not just on our species and everybody else. And that brings us front and center back to the conversation on biodiversity and how this impacts. I was interestingly a part of the conversation. I was then Assistant Secretary General of the UN back in 2018, early 2019, when we were having the UN Environment Assembly. India was actually a sponsor of the plastic resolution at UNEA, which would have been a binding treaty actually, because there everything is, unlike the UN General Assembly, in UNEA everything is agreed by consensus, not by a majority vote. But once it is done, it is binding. And India was the sponsor of a very forward-looking treaty, actually, or not a treaty in that sense, but it would have become a treaty once everybody agrees. They had moved a resolution and they have put it forward. It didn't go very far because the same countries that are championing now the plastics treaty were the ones to veto it. And I can speak freely now. And these are all matters of public record, so there's not much to speculate. It's all on public record. And then, many years later, and I'm saying this not about it. I mean, of course, it was unusual for India to champion that, which was, I thought, extremely brave for India at that time. And the then Prime Minister, who's still the Prime Minister of India, really went out of the way to present India's environmental credentials to the world community. He even, and that year, India was hosting the World Environment Day in 2018. And so it was the global host. And he even announced that we'll get rid of single-use plastic very quickly, and it was a very short timeline before any other country really put forward those kind of ambitions, so which was phenomenal. But ambitions don't equal action. We know that in the climate space, in the environment space. We've seen it long enough to know that we say things we don't mean, and we mean things that we don't say. And so what happens now is that the plastic treaty is certainly a welcome step, but it's a very minimalistic thing in my view, because the moment you announce there's a real chance of a treaty, then there's the industry capture that happens. And environmental activists are already complaining that, this is basically going to be a non-treaty, even if it works out eventually, because there will be everything in the future. We'll do this in 10 years, we'll do this in 20 years, we'll do this in 30 years, by which time the planet would have completely disintegrated, not the physical planet, but the ecological fabric of the planet. And then so that's what should be really bothering us. And that's why this conversation is so timely and so important. And I'm glad that all of these key stakeholders and the key voices in that spectrum are coming together to discuss this. So now, of course, that's a challenge, and I just wanted to frame that challenge so that we understand what we are dealing with. Otherwise, we'll keep feeling good about incremental gains without making real progress, meaningful action that can really change the paradigm. I also want to spend a minute or two on what can governments do, especially the EPR schemes. The EPR schemes vary widely across the spectrum. In some countries, if you have a refrigerator, instead of dumping it into the landfill, which is what happens in most countries that have no resources, or for that matter, any other equipment. A refrigerator quickly comes to mind, but then there are washing machines, there are televisions, all of which have significant amount of plastic components that goes into the landfill, and then they stay there for hundreds of years, because even the best of countries in the world do not have the resources to deal with their landfill problem. And I'm talking about legacy landfills, not about the current ones. I think many countries now have the statutes and systems in place to deal with current waste as it is coming in. But the legacy waste is literally a mountain of a problem, and no pun intended. It is literally a mountain of a problem in most countries. So how can we make that system more transparent, more effective, so that the resources are available? And if somebody can pay $400 for a refrigerator, I'm sure they can pay $420 for a refrigerator. And then they take that $20, front load it into the cost, and make sure that money is available with legal penalties for either misusing that money or not using it effectively, and to recycle e-waste. The UN did, and this is also at the time when I was still at the UN, and did a path-breaking report on the kind of gigantic piles of e-waste that the world produces, and how little is ever recycled. But there is also a fortune in that proverbial pyramid of mountainous e-waste, that you can actually produce every kind of precious minerals and semi-precious minerals like gold, copper, cobalt, nickel, lithium, everything that you can imagine that drives the new economy can actually come out of processing that e-waste, and EPR schemes can be a very effective tool in that. And then, of course, last but not the least, how do you make sure that developing countries that are struggling with this challenge have the kind of sustainable finance models that, everybody talks about solar, that's now the holy grail of climate action. Everybody talks about renewables. Earlier it was just solars, but now they're talking about wind, they're talking about geothermal, tidal, all kinds of, but it's mostly renewable energy. But if you go back 25 years and you look at the entire amount of money that has been spent to make it effective to where it is today, and if you quantify it in terms of carbon emissions avoided, it's about $500 per ton of CO2. That's how much governments have spent to bring renewable energy to where it is today. And so we need to understand that nothing happens for free. And so whether the money is available within a country or whether the money will be made available as grants or subsidies, or more importantly, innovative finance models, where somebody comes in and becomes a co-guarantor. You don't need to give a grant, but you just share a little bit of your credit rating, and that then, others can use that credit rating and that credit envelope and create a financial structure that can then drive this kind of change. And so that's the biggest financial gap in addressing plastic pollution, that most countries that are struggling with legacy waste and legacy policy problems are incapable of handling this, even if you have a Green Party coming to power, or even if you have environmentally conscious politicians that are really, and then reality bites. I mean, take the case of India. The Prime Minister really went out of the way of announcing that by 2021, India will be free of single-use plastic. This was in 2018. And then, of course, everybody starts crunching the numbers and how much money do you need? How much effort that has to go in? And where is that money going to come from? Because countries like India that are at the threshold of breaking into the next level of economic prosperity and growth have a lot of demands on their limited resources in terms of social inclusion, in terms of bringing up people, in terms of creating a social protection floor. There is simply, even though it's the fourth largest economy in the world and everybody talks a lot about it, in per capita terms, it is still a very low income country, in global terms. So absolute numbers, yes, big, but as you break it down to people, it is really not where it needs to be. And so how does it find resources to be able to channelize it into this big problem? And politics is run by political cycles. So it is not an immediate problem because people are the more immediate focus. So if you can get somebody to travel somewhere without having to buy a ticket, because poor people do not have, in most cases, do not have the money to buy a ticket. And one could go into all these benefit sharing schemes that the governments come up with. There's a valid need for that for people at the bottom of the pyramid. So there are very little resources left to do what is important from the perspective of environment, from biodiversity, from climate, and from planetary stability. And so that's why it is extremely important that we look at ways and means of not just grants. I mean, they help, but they are never at the scale that is required to make significant change. But innovative finance models, how they can really support the kind of change makers and champions we need to empower to get to the other side of this problem. And then those were the few thoughts I wanted to share. And thank you for having me. And more power to every champion in this conversation and everywhere else to do what we need to do to really make a difference. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Tripathi. And definitely an integrated approach is needed, wherein we have finance, we have knowledge sharing, we have technology and alternatives and intent at the top of everything, political will to drive these type of cases, especially the plastic pollution thing. Thank you so much for your nuanced perspective. And as always, you have just struck the nail on the coffin. Thank you. Next speaker is Dr. Gopal from AMI. He's speaking in place of Dr. Alok Sitka. Dr. Gopal, please introduce yourself because I do not have your biodata with me.
So I'll take that burden, Sweta. Thank you. Okay, no, so actually, Dr. Sika was primarily invited, but he seems to be occupied and may join maybe by the end of this meeting also. So I am Dr. Gopal Kumar. I am Deputy Country Representative, International Water Management Institute, India. Good evening to all. And I'm really honored, and I should thank Dr. Sika for this delayed joining, so that I'm speaking here just on lighter note, but maybe a line about International Water Management Institute. This is a CGI institute. I think you may be knowing, but some of our participants may not be aware of that. This is one of the CGI research center. We are research for development organization and mainly working for water security, land resource, and food security. So now, since water and plastic has become inseparable, so probably this is the right platform. And I must compliment Dr. Arvind, Sweta, and your team that this is really a very timely debate, I would say, or discussions and deliberations to which me is happy to join. So I think a lot of speakers has already highlighted many problems, including plastic pollutions. Now plastics are everywhere, maybe marine, freshwater, terrestrial ecosystem. And Ritesh has mentioned some data also, just to complement or supplement those data, because in last 20 years, I think plastic production globally has doubled, and the waste has more than doubled because sink is limited now, and that in that direction, processing and all the development was limited. So waste has increased more than doubled, probably 2.2 times, and that is challenging. And unfortunately for this part of world, particularly in India, I could see one of the Nature article where they have gone for reverse modeling from plastic emissions, and they are rating India now one of the largest plastic polluters in the world. I don't know, but then Nature article has come to. So this is scary for us, and since we don't have many things on place to treat those materials, just 30% is recycled in India. That is a government database says. So, though often spotlight is on ocean plastics, but fresh waters and even at watershed level, plastic pollutions are there equally important. And since EME will be more dealing with the fresh water and maybe watershed things, and that is how it interests us for this kind of discussion and learning. You know, urban trends and all choking, I think problem has been highlighted. If you add another dimension as a climate exposure like floods, that is accentuated by plastics, and that accentuates vulnerability part also. So it's directly linked to the climate change, and that is accentuated because of this plastic pollution, particularly in urban area. But nowadays rural flooding is also a phenomena where a drain system is choked and then you find rural flooding. So all those things are coming up as a new problem, maybe effect of these plastic pollutions everywhere. So the IMI is working in almost many countries, mostly in global south and South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa, where IMI works extensively. We found plastic pollutions affecting our not only water quality, it affects agricultural productivity, ecosystem resilience, and even microplastics are now found in treated water. Even in Delhi, there were reports that treated water carries microplastics. Forget about your glass and bottles. So these things are touching almost every citizen now, and obviously it needs a lot of deliberations. And again, I'm complimenting you for taking this initiative. So in agricultural landscape, plastic mulch and packaging waste are the most polluters, particularly in this developing part and in India, because plastic mulch is getting too popular and we don't have any backup arrangement and things to deal with that wastage. So that is another challenge we are facing, and that degrades soil, and that sometimes affect infiltration rate and drainage, and ultimately leading to your flooding and sometimes water scarcity also in some area. Biodiversity part, since your core part is there, and see, water, plastics, and biodiversity cannot segregate actually. You know, biodiversity is directly affected by plastic pollutions, particularly in water bodies, which is very crucial for biodiversity is mostly clogged, and that affects your aquatic life. And once aquatic life it is affected, see this uh, poor populations of the country which depends on aquatic life for livelihood, their livelihood is just affected. So farming, fisheries, ecotourism, in many cases you might have seen that ecotourism is also affected. So all these part of the problem. And since climate change, some cases where water scarcity is there, climate change is accentuated. So how IMI looks at it, and though in India we don't have any specific project right now dealing with plastic pollutions, but IMI as a whole, they have been into this business, and now they look at a system lens. And I appreciate the brief, those who has prepared one-page brief. You talk about integrated solutions. So fortunately, IMI are on the same page with you, and we work and talk about integrated land, water, waste management, and we advocate now mainstreaming plastic monitoring into watershed and river basin management plans. We are not touching ocean part, but if these are the conduits, and if you make an integrated plan, having converting this into sinks, probably ocean are less affected. So that is how IMI is promoting and working in this direction. We also work in nature-based solutions where like wetland buffers and vegetation strips, those kind of things that basically intercepts those plastic flow to the larger water body. Circular economy part, we have dedicated team, and maybe circularity is one thing where we look for lot of recycling, and we need to leverage market forces and finance to increase the recycling and make it more tenable. As of now, recycling becomes recycled product becomes sometimes more costly than the fresh product. So this scenario is obviously not going to motivate any investors on planet. So probably we need to tune it our system and policy to make it a little incentivized so that the recycling part and circular economy is means adopted at a larger level. Strengthening community-based model. So see, IMI has a strength of working with community, and we advocate community approach. So obviously that is the one we are looking for. And if you see capacity building and institutional gap, as you wanted some points on that, probably we must bridge the gap between national policy and local implementations. So we have so many policies for mainly for biodiversity conservation, but recently for plastic management also. But the real implementation is a challenge. I think we all agree that implementation is a challenge, and how we can make it or how we can bridge the gap is a real challenge. Sometimes we work for strategy and policy advocacy also, where we are trying to bridge those gaps through policy advocacy, and IMI is very active on that front. I see that I'll take one example from Swachh Bharat mission. And my message is that the sensitization part is really not adequate at this point. You know, in Swachh Bharat mission, if I have to say one thing for success of Swachh Bharat mission, which I rate, maybe you are on the same page in rating that mission is successful. If so, then the crucial point was the sensitization of children, youth, even women. So now if you see, if you throw anything, your children will stop you from throwing. So if that kind of sensitization is brought while dealing with plastic, probably things will change. So we must rope in all the popular figure. Maybe some cases even religious figure may deliver better message for some group of people, those who are followers and all, to avoid the plastic pollution and maybe conscious use of plastic. Sometimes popular political leaders or maybe heroes and a sports person, those who are catching for advertisement, let us make them and put them for sensitization job. And I see that is very crucial, because you know the legal things in India, I think probably particularly India, I see some international audience here, so may not be relevant to them. And but in India, I know that enforcement doesn't work really, not in plastic, but in many cases. So probably sensitization and community mobilization is the key to take from here onwards. But some technical innovations are also required, not just to track microplastic, but even for recycling, the cost and all aspects. So technical development is one thing. IMI is not directly involved, but we are partnering with some of the organizations which are, they are working with us to develop some low-cost technologies. And on finance part, that is a crucial, you know, and unless and until the finance is there, probably will not move, things will not move. So IMI is not directly involved in finance, but we are working with working for a policy that can leverage some finance towards this. And our global Colombo team is very active on it. They are giving input to even Ramsar sites. So sensitization will be one thing, and then plastic pollution is a development and biodiversity crisis now. I think no one can run away from that. It's related to developmental aspects also, and IMI stand committed. We are looking for partnership. So maybe Dr. Arvind and Sweta and any other whosoever is there, maybe we can sit together. And since IMI is directly into this business, not IMI India, but IMI Global is there. And once you are motivating us, probably IMI India will also be on the same page. So maybe we'll look for partnership, and let's act not only to reduce plastic, but to rebuild harmony between nature and society. So maybe with this brief message, I'll end my short speech, and maybe Dr. Alok join, and if he wishes, he can supplement also. Thank you. Thank you, Sweta. Thank you, Dr. Arvind.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gopal. And you have touched almost every aspect of what the discussions are about. Thank you so much. Now, our next speaker is Dr. Bholu Ram Yadav. He's a senior scientist, solid and hazardous waste management CSR, National Environment Engineering Center Institute. He holds a PhD in Environmental Science and Engineering from IIT Bombay. His expertise lies in municipal solid waste management, hazardous waste management, plastic waste management, sewage sludge management, and wastewater treatment. He is currently involved in research activities at NERI, particularly in solid and hazardous waste management. Dr. P.I. Yadav, please.
First of all, thank you, ma'am, for a nice introduction. I would like to thank Dr. Arvind Kumar for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts about the plastic thing. So, first of all, I would like to tell about the rising issue related to plastic that we can see through the themes of the Environment Day. We can see the plastic is the only theme which is repeating third time. So in 2018, the theme was like beat plastic. In 2023, it was repeated again, and in 25 again we have the theme for environment is plastic. So plastic, we can say now is not a local issue. Now it became a global problem because the plastic which is being generated in my household, it may impact 1,000 kilometers away from my house because through the marine route. So in the area of plastic, we have been working for last 2 decades in NERI. So although I have started my research activities in plastic for last 5 years, so we have done a lot of projects in the area of plastic, and for that we have identified how the plastic impact the marine or aquatic life. So for that we try to find the root cause. So the root cause is basically the uncollected plastic, which is not being collected by the municipalities or local authorities or dumped here and there by the local people. So during the monsoon season or during the rain, it travels through the drains to the marine life. So from the marine, it may travel thousands of kilometers because the plastic is the substance or polymer which can sustain in the environment for thousands of years. It is non-degradable component, so it slowly degrades because of the UV and abrasion activities, so it converted into microplastic. The size can be reduced, but it cannot be destroyed. So it will remain in the system for many years or many decades. So because of the global issues, so there are a lot of national and international policies are there. So to meet the policies or to achieve the goals, so we have to start from the local level. So if I talk about the scenario in India, so most of the plastic which is not being recycled, that is generated from municipal solid waste. Because if we see the transportation sector, most of the plastic is recycled because the source of generation in transportation agriculture is basically point source. And in municipal solid waste sector, the generation of plastic is not from point source. Basically, it's the area source. So we do not have any control on the generation of the type of plastic, how it is traveling from household to the dumping site. So major source of contamination in aquatic as well as land environment is basically the waste plastic which is generated from municipal solid waste. So we have done a lot of surveys in several cities of India. So where we found that when we see the flow of plastic from household to the recycling or in any industry, a major contribution is from informal waste sector. So informal sector is the basic sector who is not recognized by the government bodies or who are not registered on the government portals. So because of involvement of informal sector, we do not have proper data on the recycling part of the plastic in Indian scenario basically. So to channelize the informal sector to formal sector, there are a lot of policies are there. So EPR recently has come into picture to give the incentives to the recyclers. But the main issue in India is major part of recycling is being done by the informal sector. Even though the formal sector are getting incentives from the government for recycling the plastic, at the same time, brand owners and large industries who are dealing with the plastic, they are getting credits from the formal sectors, but due to lack of monitoring on the recyclers, we do not have proper data. What is the capacity of the recycling that particular industry has, and to whom they are selling the credits for recycling of the plastic. On the other side, the major credit or major flow of plastic from the brand owners or packers that is flowing from packing to waste sector, that is basically especially municipal solid waste. So to channelize that or to get it back to the recycling, the major flow of plastic from the dumping ground or from the municipal solid waste to the recycling product, but that is not happening because most of the plastic which is being recycled, that is from the large outlets from where the recyclers are getting similar kind of products for recycling. On the other hand, I would like to add that the only large industrial sector for recycling is sustainable in India. Small scale recyclers are not up to that mark because of the quality of granules which are being made from the different types of plastic, because segregation is the major issue in Indian scenario. So if we make granules out of the various type of polymer, you will not get the good quality of polymer. So ultimately solution to get rid of the plastic is basically upcycling, not recycling. Upcycling means why don't we go for petroleum making out of the plastic, because once we get the petroleum, then we can make the virgin plastic out of this. Or we can use that petroleum for energy recovery as well, instead of direct burning of the plastic into cement kilns and or other plants. So upcycling is basically very limited in Indian scenario. Only few industries are working on that, is also on pilot scale, not on large scale. Some major project on recycling of plastic is basically large scale, that is basically segregation or RDF making. RDF making is basically what we are recovering energy out of plastic by burning into cement kilns, because only cement kilns are suitable to accept the plastic which is made from MSW waste, that is called RDF. Apart from cement industry, we cannot use the RDF in any industry because of limitation of the calorific value and all. And due to this, we have limitation on the transportation of the plastic, because the majorly plastic which is generated from MSW sector is generated in city areas, and cement industries are very far away from the cities. So transportation is the other challenge. But who will bear the transportation cost? That is a major issue. So we need several policy interventions to bridge these gaps. So first of all, we should implement the proper collection of the plastic or MSW from the household level. For that, we nowadays we have like innovative technologies like ICT based technologies, information and communication technologies, from which we can take the 100% collection and segregation of the waste at the household level. So once we get the segregated plastic, we can definitely recycle or upcycle the plastic product in a good quality product. So to fill these gaps, so there are policy interventions, and as recently said, the awareness is the major key thing that we have to keep in place. So basically, we can say it's not an individual effort. It's basically cumulative effort from the individual as well as municipalities, policymakers, industries, and brand owners and the plastic manufacturers. If we talk about the single-use plastic is basically nowadays mostly banned in most of the states of India, but still we are not able to achieve 100% elimination of single-use plastic. So we are looking for alternatives. So on the name of alternatives, there are a lot of products are being discharged into a market named as biodegradable plastic. So as of now, there are only few studies are there which shows the capacity of the composter or any degradable system which can degrade the plastic which is named as degradable plastic into the market. So there are a lot of scope to look into this matter as well, and lot of studies are required to develop some material which can be replaced single-use plastic. So these are the several things which we can think of. So in the end, I would like to again thank Dr. Arvind Kumar for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts on the issue, which is burning issue nowadays, we can say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Giyar Yadav, for your scientific perspective on the work that NEERI has been doing on the domains of plastic pollution. Thank you so much for giving us time. If there are closing comments, any? Karen, Carrie, Dr. Kumar, Dr. Carrie Albury, any closing comment?
Just to say thank you very much for the rich conversation. You've touched on a lot of challenging issues that are now for members to consider. So thank you very much for.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for your time as well. Dr. Karen?
Thank you so much also from our side, from IUCN, and happy to support ongoing, not only the negotiations, but also the preparation for implementation of the future plastic treaty, and to very importantly to bridge to biodiversity actions and strategies, because as everybody knows, biodiversity is the basis of every economical and social well-being. So it's really important that we protect this.
Thank you. Dr. Gopal or Dr.
Yeah.
Sikka, if you're joined.
I think he could not probably, or maybe the link was specific, so probably one person could join, because in my screen it is showing Dr. Alok Sikka. So I don't know, there may be something maybe, but
No
anyway,
problem,
we're
no
done.
problem.
So
Dr. Arvind Kumar, any closing comments from your side on this?
Well, to confront the intertwined crisis of plastic pollution, global warming and biodiversity loss required concerned action across all sectors involved in the plastic life cycle. Though we can make a difference through our own habits, corporations obviously have a much bigger footprint. Cutting or limiting production is the first step. Plastic is produced because there is a demand. Government can help to promote public sector research on plastics by establishing research institutes, creating industrial clusters, and supporting public-private partnerships. Going forward, closely studying the economic dynamics of moving towards plastic substitutes at the further state of the plastic cycle will help countries and communities determine the right mix of policies and incentivize to fight the plastic menace head on. The ban alone is not enough. We need to harmonize national laws on waste management, climate change, and conservation. Only then we live in harmony with nature in this sustainable, clean environment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kumar, for your nuanced perspective and for sharing this important thing that we all have to come together to beat this plastic pollution and also to address biodiversity loss and the impacts that biodiversity is having because of this plastic pollution. Making world plastic pollution free is not going to be easy, and the responsibility is not limited to one stakeholder. Plastic industry or governments, for instance. All the stakeholders involved, from the production of raw materials, plastic manufacturers, giant FMCG companies, national, state, and local governments, along with the consumers, have their parts to play. This will be possible when the companies come together and pool their resources to find an optimal design that not only promotes profit, but also cares for people and planet. The world is making some progress towards preserving biodiversity and agreed to a new global biodiversity framework. However, there are serious obstacles to realizing the framework. Fundamentally, all threats to biodiversity are related to humanity's drive for economic growth, built on increased consumption of food, energy, and natural resources. To preserve the natural world, governments need to integrate biodiversity considerations across all sectors. We have to adopt sustainable consumption and production patterns, produce responsibly, like plastic, which is a victim of its own success. Cheap, light, and flexible, can be used anywhere. Negatively affecting living beings on the earth can be avoided by not just reducing, reusing, and recycling all our plastic waste, but also finding sustainable alternatives. So before we give up on plastic, perhaps we should think about how to use and reuse it better. Otherwise, with so much ending up in landfills and the environment, plastic will continue doing what it was made to do, endure. We thank the National Water Mission of the Ministry of Jal Shakti, Government of India for supporting this event. I thank you, ladies and gentlemen, dignitaries, speakers, and the wonderful audience joining from across the board. Looking forward to seeing you all again. Thank you so much. Thank you. Bye. Have a nice day, all of you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.